At the risk of sounding a little political, today's episode is really important. Not just important for the LGBTQ plus community, but important for everyone. So today you will meet James Black, who used to be called Stacy Stevenson. James is the CEO of Family Equality, the largest LGBTQ plus community group in the country that supports families. And as someone who might be growing your family or is interested in supporting people who are growing their families, this episode will be really important for you to understand. It will be so helpful for you to understand the issues that face us all, our families, our schools, our children, everybody who we care about, and those who we don't even know. So tune in today. It's a really important episode, and I think you will get a lot out of it. Welcome to Building Your Family. This is a podcast about surrogacy, fertility treatment, and all the ways the modern family is built. And on today's podcast, I have a special guest, a hero of mine, but I want to first say a few things because this is airing on Pride Month. I don't know when you'll be watching this, but I wanted to say a few things about what's happening in the world and, what our guest has in front of them. So as many of you know, we have to deal with all sorts of issues from banning and restricting access to books to preventing and censoring discussions for LGBTQ people and topics in school for forcing staff to out LGBTQIA plus students, allowing teachers and staff to refuse to call transgender students by the pronouns they want to use, preventing transgender and non-binary students from using bathrooms and locker rooms that are aligned with their identity, preventing transgender students from participating in school sports, restricting or preventing transgender young people from getting gender-affirming care, and punishing supportive parents. And as you will see, our guest is the CEO of Family Equality. And in 2019, Family Equality did a really fantastic study showing that 63% of LGBTQIA millennials are considering starting or expanding their family. And we know that this is so important. 3.7 at the time and more now, children under the age of 18 have an LGBTQIA parent. And so it is so important, more than ever, to really consider all of these issues and more. And our guest was involved in a historic settlement, which they will share with you. And it is so important to support family equality and to support every supportive effort aimed at helping people be who they are. So with all of that, I know that's a mouthful, but
beautifully said.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you here, James. Last year we had you here and your name was Stacy Stevenson. So I think a lot of people might be a little confused by that. So maybe we can start there and you can help share how that transition happened.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me again. And I was using my name, Stacy Stevenson, last year. This is my first Pride season as James Black. So I'm feeling incredibly grateful and liberated because I feel like I am, or I know that I am, being the real me and stepping into the real me. I have had this name James with me for some years, and I did not know how to step into it. I didn't know how to use it publicly. And I had, even though I was out as a queer person, I had fears around how it would be accepted from a societal perspective, from my parents, which have, I've already gone through this journey of coming out with my parents one time. What am I now? I would be coming out again. What would that mean? And it's, I never thought that I would even have to, even consider that again. But tragedy struck my family when my brother died suddenly last year, tragically. That oftentimes wakes us up, unfortunately, to the things that we need to be paying attention to and the people that we need to be, the paths that we need to be on. And that's what happened. And, after years of sort of, only holding this James in my heart and, telling my wife and maybe a friend or two, I decided that I was going to use it publicly and embrace it and say loud and proud that I'm proud and that I am James Black and that I'm genderqueer, and be very unapologetic about it And that's where I am versus last Pride Month. I also say, or Pride season, I'll also say that I honor who I was, and I've been talking with people who have helped me understand that when you transition your name or change your name, at least for some of us, it's not about diminishing the person who you were or the name that you used to use. And so I'll say that I honor that name. It got me where I was and to how far I came, and now I embrace this name.
Wow. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother. That's awful. Terrible.
Yeah, that was difficult. And I'm also grateful just for his role in my life, and this see me playing with this necklace because this is his fingerprint.
Mm.
He's my little brother, and so it helped me embrace some things that I was hesitating about, I'll say.
So you still wear your brother's necklace?
Yeah, actually, this is not his necklace. This is a necklace that was created for me after he passed.
Oh.
This is his true fingerprint. That the
Wow.
funeral home created this.
Wow.
And my wife surprised me with this, with one for me, one for my sister, one for my mother, and one for his daughter.
Mm.
So I never take this off.
That's so sweet.
And it's interesting because he was such an authentic guy. He was someone who lived his life out loud, and I would sometimes go, "You're being a little too much," you know. He taught me that, and kicked me out of my comfort zone, and I'm so grateful for Daryl for doing that.
And I think it's, everyone's kind of duty in life to be the full extension of themselves, right? I mean, I think we all are kind of given this task in this lifetime to be the full extension of who we are. And sadly, there's so many people in this country who feel that they can't be who they are. And even today, in a world where I know you were interviewed by Colton Underwood, and he was on this podcast too, even for someone in the public eye, you would think would have all the freedom in the world to do what he wants, he still felt inhibited. And so we have so many difficulties in this world still. Why do you think that is, James, that people have such an issue with other people just living their lives?
It's a lot to unpack. How much time do we have? I can talk from an LGBTQ plus perspective. I think in a lot of ways that we and our freedom are scary to people. The way that we can live our lives out loud, which takes a lot of bravery, while other folks may feel that they have to conform and not be themselves and leave themselves in boxes, when we are just this vibrant and just resilient and creative community. I think that as beautiful as that is, I think that's also scary to the masses, that you have this community that is just understands gender in a very different way, understands love and pride in a very different way, understands many of the societal concepts that I think people reject, that love should only be this one way, that gender should only be this way, et cetera, et cetera. And I do think that what we're seeing is that people, they'll say religion. I don't buy that. It's not religion. It's not at all. They'll say it's about protecting the children. It's not about protecting the children. That's not what it is. It's something deeper. So what I'm thinking and what I'm saying is that it's deeper than that. And it is fear. It's fear of their own existence, fear of their own, who they are, fear of, or who they want to be. It's really what it is. It's like all this religion and protecting the kids and parental rights those are distractions. It's not what it is. So it's deep in the fear, this sort of struggle, I think, for people to understand that it is okay for folks to be vastly different than them, and that they need to sort of do the internal work on themselves. And that hate that you see is a projection. So I don't buy any of the reasons that they give us. It's something deeper than that. It's something deeper than that. And here's the thing: if you talked about the myriad of challenges that we have, and many of those were around the LGBTQ plus youth community, who are primarily attacked by the legislation that we're seeing. And many of these legislators know that introduction of legislation, bullying, harassment, et cetera, that happens, it increases the probability that a young person will want to end their life. We know that with the data. We know that 41% of LGBTQ plus youth have considered suicide. if that doesn't move you, there's something deeper going on.
Yeah.
There has to be, because that should move. That is beyond political leanings. That is beyond religion. That a child no longer wants to live because they can't be themselves, and you want to continue to take their rights away.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. So when we talk about that, and we're talking about, family building, this podcast, and how people very often will say to me, well, coming out myself is one thing. Then coming out with my partner is another thing. Now we're going to have children, and we have to come out not only to our families about that, but now to a wider community of, the soccer team and the Girl Scouts and the teachers and, the environment. So should I move, or should I stay in the town that I'm in, or should I live in a place where I feel like my kids are going to be accepted, where, there's no don't say gay rules, and I don't have to worry about that sort of thing. How do you feel about that? Because you also moved, right, James?
Yes, we moved from the Dallas area to the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. The decision to move is a very personal decision, and there's not one right answer that fits for everyone, because it really depends on your life circumstances and what's happening. Because it's not just moving; you have to think about your network and your community, and obviously the harassment that you're dealing with, that many of us deal with. But then there's also these other aspects. Will you have community where you move? Will you have a network of support? Will you have a job where you move? I resonate with people who want to move now. Why we moved from Texas, we felt the growing sort of like pressure of the legislation and trying to exist as an LGBTQ plus family, an African-American LGBTQ plus family in Texas, which is already a challenge. And then you insert the threats of the legislation that they were talking about when we moved, and how that trickles down to the community and how the way people think and treat you. I understand that decision. And so I always tell people it's a really personal decision, and to not take it lightly, and to leverage any type of resources that they have, such as Family Equality. We are attempting to build an app for people who want to move. So when they have those moments of, oh my God, I have to flee. Because here's the thing, let me clarify here. We're saying move, and one of the discussions I had earlier was we called it about migration. I would call mine a migration, where I moved my family from Texas to the East Coast, and we picked up and we moved, and we had to reestablish our networks of support, and we don't have the grandparents here, the community. We had to rebuild that. That's very different than the mother in Texas who packed up everything that she had into her small car and drove from Dallas to Los Angeles for 20 hours to protect her trans child, because in Texas, they're trying to redefine child abuse to include parents who are supporting their transgender children. So there are people who are migrating, and I am grateful that I have the means, and there are people who do not have the means, and they are fleeing. And I think that's important to know, that we have Americans, LGBTQ plus families, straight families with queer children who feel like refugees in their own country.
Yes. And that's why I think so many people ask me, I'm starting my family. What do I do? Should I be thinking about this now? And what does the future look like? If you were able to create this enormous shift in this really stagnating place where there was this legislation, don't say gay legislation. You were able to do something enormous, but there's so many more things that are happening. How can we even think about making a dent in it? And should we just say, okay, well, we'll move to a more friendly state? I mean, what would you advise young parents?
The first thing I want to say is that I think there's not a safe state per se anymore. I think there are safer states. And the reason I say that is because you're in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Where you're seeing what I'll call our opponents and the people who don't want to see us thrive, inserting themselves strategically into school boards to make decisions that harm our children in the most progressive places.
Wow.
So I don't want to paint a picture that if you move to state X, that it's going to be completely safe, or that you're not going to end up going to a school district where you have those types of issues, because it is a strategy that the other side is using. But what I would tell young parents is to do their research and to select the state that is most aligned with what their family needs or that is most safe. What's challenging about this, Lisa, is that there's no one size fits all. There's just not. Perhaps sanctuary states are like Minnesota are a better bet than somewhere else that has not deemed itself a sanctuary state, is somewhere where they can start. When I go back to the app that we're developing, is what it's going to do is if a family's in Texas and say they want to move, they don't know where they don't know where they want to move, or they want to move to say Minnesota, they can compare the equality score, and so use data, right? The equality score in Texas, and compare it to the equality score in Minnesota, and say that's an equality score that we can deal with. We can take some risks, and this is where we'll move because this is safer. And then they can think about schools and the environment, the community. So it's why we're trying to build that, because it's such a difficult conversation. It's such a difficult decision, rather. And can we use technology and data and vetted resources so people can make the decision that's best for them? We obviously have to fight this at the macro level. But while we are trying to fight this at the macro level, from the legislation that you mentioned earlier, we need to give our parents and families as many resources and tools as we can.
That's incredible that you're developing that app. That's fantastic for young families and other people to really consider, particularly now because we have more and more families who, beyond just having kind of what we see as the same-sex gay family, we also have so many families, single parents, throuples, people who are transitioning, all kinds of families, which is the beautiful part. But the misfortune is that there are fewer and fewer places where you can really be fully yourself in this world. And so I think that's great that you're starting to develop that app for people. And you have a lot of support services. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about those so that people can know what Family Equality could provide.
One of the pillars of Family Equality is building community. And we have started to, talking about the East Coast, have started to think about family gatherings on the East Coast as a way to bring people together, as a way to build community in a time where our community does not feel as safe. And, you've been to our beautiful gala. That's one of the kind of a larger community building or fundraiser, right, that we have in New York. But what we're doing now are these bowling events for families on a Saturday or Sunday, where families can come in to a bowling alley at Chelsea Piers. We just had our last one a few months ago. I think we had 179 people.
Oh, wow.
Took over nearly the entire bowling alley and had bowling and painting and food for the kids and laser tag and all that. And it may seem that it's just a Saturday at the bowling alley. It truly is a community building event that is meant to ensure that people feel that they are connected and that they're safe, and that they know that an organization like Family Equality is willing to bring them together when in the places like New Jersey, people are feeling unsafe.
Wow.
There's things going on in a school district in Chelsea where people feel unsafe. So where can we, again, while we're fighting the good fight, how do we bring together people in the community and in person? So we're doing those community-based events. We also have peer support groups, and those are virtual. And those peer support groups, because they happen at various times during the month, but those peer support groups are meant to be safe spaces for our parents who want to, log onto a Zoom and talk to other parents like them. One of the newest ones that we are launching is one around education, how to navigate the education system or school system as an LGBTQ plus parent. There's also a trans and non-binary parents group that we started as well. And so we're really building these community spaces for our families, making them accessible, so in person and virtual. And the last thing I'll say is you probably know about Family Week, which is the largest single gathering of LGBTQ plus families in the country. But not everyone can get to Provincetown, and we're aware of that. So speaking of accessibility and equity, we had a Midwest family event last year in Chicago, and now our plan is to have another Midwest event. I think it's going to be in Minnesota this year. So really thinking about community building and serving our families from a strategic way of where do we need to show up, and we need to meet people where they are to build community, to build resiliency, to inform people. It's also a place to inform people too of what's going on while they're meeting other parents and while our kids are playing together and building community too, because our kids are hearing the bad stuff about their parents. Or this sort of new community that's starting to emerge is straight parents with queer children. They're looking for a community too, and we are
Yes.
embracing them. They need the community. This is a very different world that they're having to navigate. They are coming to the realization that the privilege that they have is not extended to their queer child. That's a reckoning that is, I'm sure, hard to get your head around.
Yeah.
How do we embrace them and ensure that they feel that they're part of the community?
That's fantastic. So all of you out there who don't know about Family Week, I lectured there one year and I love it. It's exciting and crowded and fun and so many happy faces you will not see anywhere else, where people just feel like, you know what, this is a place where I could just drop my shoulders and take a deep breath, because families are just like mine.
Drop your shoulders. Like
No.
that is exactly, as soon as you drive into P-Town, our kids drop their shoulders. I'm so glad that you said that, because it's not just let's have a fun week on the beach. It is truly the safest place probably. Now talking about safe places, right? That's probably the safest place for a family, but unfortunately inaccessible to most. But I will say also, Lisa, we had 1,600 people there last year. And we have folks from the New York area, the New Jersey area, Boston, of course, and also Berlin and Paris and places across Europe, Canada. And it's amazing.
It's really amazing. And, I think it's also important for people to understand that it doesn't have to stop there, that if anyone out there wants to reach out to family equality and start more groups, I mean, there's so many opportunities to really build up the supports that we need in this country. And sadly, so many people feel that not only is there, shame from outside, but there's shame from within, right? People feel there's still this internalized homophobia that people have because they grew up in environments that weren't safe. And so it's really a lot of work to try to get it, to move the ball up the hill and get everyone kind of on the same page. So the more opportunities to have these safe spaces, the better. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we need more of those. We do.
That's great, James.
I wanted to go back to something that you said earlier, though, if you don't mind.
Sure.
In your introduction, and you were talking about the enormous number of challenges that we have and what we have to face. And I think you said what we're up against. I believe it's necessary for people to understand where we are. You listed off a lot of challenges, but to put things into context, back in 2018, we had under 100 anti-LGBTQ plus bills. And then, so 2018, and I think jumping to 2022, we had about a couple of hundred. 2023, 500 anti-LGBTQ plus bills. 2024, as of May 28th, it was 515 bills, and we're only in Q2.
Wow.
If you think about, doing the calculation from where we were in 2018 with under 100 to be over 500 now, and the year is not even over, that's a pattern. And we're watching it closely. And when Lisa is listing all the list of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, it's real, and our community is feeling it. And for family equality, we're doing all these beautiful community events, but we're also thinking, how do we show up and fight the fight for our families? And we have to show up in a very different way. I talked about technology a little bit ago. We have to innovate, and we have to modernize, and we have to decide, how do we pivot? Because the other side's they're just throwing things at us. They're just throwing stuff, throwing spaghetti at the wall. Especially as a small organization, how do we combat that? And we're looking at the organization and how we respond in a few ways. We are, like I said, innovating. We are being really laser focused on our policy work. And we can talk a bit about education, but focusing on education. And what I mean by that are kids who have LGBTQ plus parents who experience bullying in the classroom, that they are protected. Of course, we're still focused on family creation, but we hired a family law attorney who's really focusing on not just family creation from a adoption perspective, but also IVF and protecting surrogacy and parentage, the ways that we build our families. And then, of course, child welfare, which is still problematic when we have, 120,000 children who are languishing in the foster care system. So getting really laser focused on our policy work, and then also just thinking about leadership. And Lisa, we need leaders who can fight the good fight, but that we're investing in leaders so they can have the tough conversation, so they can show up in ways to combat the other side. And we are thinking about that as well and investing in our leaders. So I want folks to know that we're thinking about where we are very strategically. And we have to, because I don't know if you've heard of Project 2025 or the Heritage Foundation.
No.
So what I'll say is a couple of things. I think everyone needs to know about this. The Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank out of Washington, D.C. And they have created, or you can go to project2025.org. They have created a 900 plus page document that will act as sort of a roadmap and a vision for their version of America. If we don't have Biden in House, it'll be Trump's kind of transition team. And the things that they are planning to do, and they're being very transparent about it, are awful. One of those is redefining family to the traditional family state, is what they are saying. And we have to think about that as a family organization. So I won't take up a lot of time, but I think if people can go read that, it's not fear mongering. It's a real threat.
Yes.
And it's really important.
I apologize to everyone who's out there if it's a little too political, but I want to say that this is right in line with what we're all facing, and many people are really, sadly kind of sticking their heads in the sand about, because there is language being used that's similar to, the Third Reich, and all sorts of language about kind of traditional families and going back to the way things used to be with Ozzie and Harriet. And I understand that many people feel that there is a sentiment that may seem nice, but it's really, really destructive. And I think it's really important for everyone out there to understand that you can't really brush this off. This is real and dangerous. And if you're concerned about your family, the concern is legitimate. It's really very, very scary that we could be entering into a world that could be more unfriendly than we can even imagine. So I have not read this 900-page document, but I will put that on my homework list.
Well, we've read it for you. Our policy team has read it for you. So if you want some Cliff's notes, let us know. But I appreciate you providing the additional background on the why. And even if you think about single parents, that is also a target within that document. And so it's not just the LGBTQ plus community. It's really anyone who does not fit this box that they've placed people in, to say that these are the people who are worth protecting, and everybody else can just, step over to the side and let's eliminate their rights and their existence. And we cannot allow that to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that everyone out there is listening to that, because it is so important now more than ever for us to all protect our rights, right? This is a civil rights issue. So everyone needs to be protected. And no matter who you are, it is important for you to be able to have your civil rights. And, what James is talking about in their story about being able to be true to their self, it's so important that we all have that freedom, right? That we all have the freedom to be the full expression of who we are as people. And so we're going to be suffocated if we don't really take these things seriously. And as we're talking about on a micro level and developing communities, but a macro level at legislation, to really think about how this is going to impact everyone. So you can write to your representatives, you can talk to your senators, you can support family equality. There's so many things that you can do that don't even cost money, that you can really be a part of. What else would you recommend, James, that people can do to really help?
We need allies more than ever now, especially in the political state that we're in. And I find it necessary to have the voices of allies in the fight with us. Oftentimes, I believe that allies are listened to more than, say, they'll listen to an LGBTQ plus person. And so I'd ask that our allies please show authentic allyship. And what that means is that protect us in the rooms that we're not in, and to say the words that need to be said when there's not an LGBTQ plus person in a room. That's what allyship looks like now. I think it's also sharing our stories and helping amplify our stories. We do lots of storytelling at Family Equality. Help us share those stories about our families. Help us tell the stories that our families are not as different as people think that they are, that we are. Also, if you have any LGBTQ plus folks in your neighborhood or your family, wrap your arms around them and support them. And they may not be saying it, but people are afraid. And I think that we need, like when I think about community building, I want to include our allies into that as well, is to wrap your arms around an LGBTQ plus person or LGBTQ plus child and say, what is it that you need? I'm here for you. But more than ever, we need the voices and the allyship of our straight allies.
And what do you think people can do about what's happening in the schools, this book banning and inability to really embrace families and not allow children to talk about their families? Are there any other things that we can do at this point to try to help our communities?
When I think about schools, I think it's necessary that folks like you and me, LGBTQ plus parents, allies, that we are inserting ourselves on these school boards. And we see that the other side is strategically inserting themselves into the school board so they can be a part of these harmful policies. We have to do the same. And so now I was talking with someone yesterday on the Queer Family podcast, and she's another queer parent, but she sort of had this reckoning of, this is not what I didn't think that I was going to have to join the PTA because I have, all these other things going on. I didn't think I was going to have to be on the school board, but now I have to, because they are not only attacking me, they're attacking our children, not just her children, but other children. Mm-hmm. So we will have to show up in a way that we are at the table with these folks, because strategically they know if they insert themselves enough in these in progressive school systems like what's happening in Chelsea, that they can wreak havoc and create harmful policies that harm our children. Yes. So if you have the time and capacity to join PTAs, school boards where these harmful policies are starting and being created.
That's great advice. That's really great advice. And it makes me think about what you said earlier about all of this fear, that perhaps the more that we can educate other people, hopefully the fear will lessen. I mean, we can only hope that the fear will lessen if people feel that we can educate them and help them understand that people are people. It doesn't really matter what you look like or who you love, right? And so
exactly.
the
it's a
more
distraction.
Right. So what you're saying is to really lean into it more. And of course, for many people, they feel afraid and they feel nervous. And what if I put my kids out there, or what if I'm coming out to my community and someone's going to be hurtful? But what you're sharing now, James, is that it sounds like really leaning in more and trying to integrate yourself into the community, trying to integrate yourself into the school, being vocal as you can, participating in these groups really helps kind of infiltrate good feelings in places where fear is festering.
Right. As best you can and as much as you can. And I also know that if you do not feel safe, especially if you're an LGBTQ plus parent or a trans person, you may not be comfortable with sticking your neck out there and going to the school board meetings to speak out on some of the policies. And I understand that too. So I always want to make sure that I'm mentioning that, because there is an issue of safety. Yes. And then for those who feel comfortable with doing it, yes, it really is about integrating yourself into those systems now, because they are being strategically attacked and harming our children. And we've had, I think it's 7 Don't Say Gay bills that have been passed. And 7 may not sound like a lot, but even 1 Don't Say Gay bill isn't too much, right?
Of course,
and
yeah.
We think about, when I talked a little bit about earlier, how we're getting laser focused on our policy work, and education is one of those pillars. Focusing on education is why we were able to partner with Roberta Kaplan's firm and the National Center for Lesbian Rights to take Florida to court to challenge the Don't Say Gay bill. And while it took some time and there were lots of starts and stops, we, as you mentioned earlier, we won a historic settlement. And that historic settlement means that children in the school system there can say gay, they can say trans. It means that teachers will not get fired or threatened for having a picture of their spouse. Queer teachers have a picture of their spouse in their classroom. That gay straight alliances are back. It means something, and I am so thankful that we prevailed. And even though the law is still in the books, that's historic. And we need to continue that momentum. But those are the sorts of things that are happening at schools. And I hope that what happened in Florida, what we were able to accomplish in Florida, can serve as a model, but also I hope it serves as a, almost a warning, right? That, hey, we're going to keep fighting. And whatever you do, we're going to keep fighting and we're going to make it right. And we certainly are going to keep fighting for our kids. You start messing with our kids, then that's
right. And that's big trend, right? It's true. It's so true. Yeah. So as we wind down, James, is there anything else you want to share about family equality? Because I think we talked a lot about families and starting families and how important it is if you feel safe to be involved in some of the legislation. Are there other things that people should know about family equality or know for this upcoming season where we have an election coming?
What I'll say is that we are going to mobilize our families as much as we can, thinking about the election, and that we are looking at all scenarios. So no matter what happens, we can be there for our family. So I guess what I want to say is no matter what happens in November, what we are saying is that we're going to be there for our families. And we're thinking about what could happen, what could be best case scenario. What are those things, right? And what are we seeing? So we can ensure that we don't lose momentum and that our families feel that there's always a place to support them. But it's really also important for people to understand that this is a critical election. And this is not being partisan because we work across political lines. It really is about what's right. Mm-hmm. And eliminating the rights of families, eliminating the rights of children. It's not okay. It's not right. So this transcends political lines. This is really about our humanity and what's right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's, what you're saying is so important for everyone to really think about, because what you're saying is that you're not alone, right? That you guys at Family Equality have your back and you're not going to be alone. And yes, there might be moments that feel scary. And certainly with all the ancillary issues to this subject, but one that I'm focused on, which is fertility treatment and the survival of healthy embryos and being able to create families in the way that you prefer. All of these issues are going to impact your life and where you are living. And so just so you know, Family Equality is behind you and you're never going to be alone. You know that there's a place you can go to for support. And that's a beautiful thing. So thank you so much for that, James.
Thank you so much. And hopefully this doesn't mess up the flow, but we are working to protect IVF too, along with Lisa and others. We're working hard to protect IVF. So just know that as well.
Absolutely. Yes, we know that and we appreciate it so much. So thank you so much, James. And congratulations on the name change. We're really, really excited for you. It's wonderful. And it's so nice to have you here, and happy Pride. I look forward to Pride. Yeah, happy Pride. And let's all, try to find things to celebrate because we do have each other.
Yes. And we have hope for the future. There's lots.
And we have hope. Yes. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming. You can reach James at Family Equality. And is there any other place on social media they should reach out to you, or the website?
On Instagram. So follow Family Equality on Instagram. And then I'm also on Instagram at the James Black. And so you can find me there.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming, and please subscribe because that's how we keep going, and join us next time. Hi, it's Lisa Schumann. I hope that you enjoyed that video and I hope it helped you. And if it did, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe because that's how we keep going. It's really important to us. And if you liked it, you might like this one.